All right, everyone. We already read the introduction here from Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard. So we will be starting with the actual story right down here at the bottom of page 190 in our classics book. A couple of summers ago, I was walking along the edge of the island to see what I could see in the water, and mainly to scare frogs. Frogs have an inelegant way of taking off from invisible positions on the bank just ahead of your feet in dire panic, emitting a froggy yike and splashing into the water. Incredibly, this amused me, and incredibly, it amuses me still. As I walked along the grassy edge of the island, I got better and better at seeing frogs both in and out of the water. I learned to recognize, slowing down, the difference in texture of the light reflected from mud bank, water, grass, or frog. Frogs were flying all around me. At the end of the island, I noticed a small green frog. He was exactly half in and half out of the water, looking like a schematic diagram of an amphibian, and he didn't jump. He didn't jump. I crept closer. At last, I knelt on the island's winter-killed grass, lost, dumbstruck, staring at the frog in the creek just 4 feet away. Okay, so she says 2 times, he didn't jump. He didn't jump. And she gets closer to him, and now she's feeling dumbstruck, meaning she is in awe. She doesn't understand. Why is this frog letting me get so close to him? Because we all know typically if you're walking around a body of water and there is a frog, kind of relaxing on the side, as soon as it hears or sees something coming towards it, it's going to seek shelter in the water. However, this frog is not moving. He was a very small frog with wide, dull eyes. And just as I looked at him, he slowly crumpled and began to sag. The spirit vanished from his eyes as it was snuffed, as if snuffed. His skin emptied and dropped. His very skull seemed to collapse and settle like a kicked tent. He was shrinking before my eyes like a deflating football. Okay, so what is actually happening here? What is happening to this frog? He was shrinking before my eyes like a deflating football. Now we know this is an example of a simile. We are comparing the frog to a deflating football using the word like, okay? This frog is dying. She is watching this frog die. I watched the taut, glistening skin on his shoulders ruck and rumple and fall. Soon, part of his skin, formless as a pricked balloon, lay in floating folds like bright scum on top of the water. It was a monstrous and terrifying thing. I gaped, bewildered, appalled. An oval shadow hung in the water behind the drained frog. Then the shadow glided away. The frog skin bag started to sink. Okay, so this entire paragraph here, she comes upon a frog and watches it die, take its last breath. I had read about the giant water bug, but never seen one. Giant water bug is really the name of the creature, which is an enormous half-bodied brown beetle. It eats insects, tadpoles, fish, and frogs. Its grasping forelegs are mighty. Okay, so now we're about to find out what happened to this frog. And hooked inward. It seizes a victim with these legs, hugs it tight, and paralyzes it with enzymes injected during a vicious bite. That one bite is the only bite it ever takes. Through the puncture shoot the poisons that dissolve the victim's muscles and bones and organs, all but the skin. And through it, the giant water bug sucks out the victim's body, reduced to a juice. This event is quite common in warm, fresh water. The frog I saw was being sucked by a giant water bug. I had been kneeling on the island grass when the unrecognizable flap of frog skin settled on the creek bottom, swaying. I stood up and brushed the knees of my pants. I couldn't catch my breath. Okay, so what happened to this frog? It was killed by a giant water bug. Okay, the giant water bug, what does it do? It bites its victims and it paralyzes it with enzymes injected during a vicious bite. So basically poisons them. And what happens? Their muscles, bones, and organs are all dissolved. Pretty brutal. About 5 years ago, I saw a mockingbird make a straight vertical descent from the roof gutter of a 4-story building. It was an act as careless and spontaneous as the curl of a stem or the kindling of a star. The mockingbird took a single step into the air and dropped. His wings were still folded against his sides as though he were singing from a limb and not falling, accelerating 32 feet per second per second. Okay, so 32 feet per second per second. This is the rate at which a falling body accelerates toward the ground. Okay, accelerating through empty air. Just a breath before he would have been dashed to the ground, he unfurled his wings with exact, deliberate care, revealing the broad bars of white, spread his elegant, white-banded tail, and so floated onto the grass. I had just rounded a corner when his insouciant step caught my eye. There was no one else in sight. The fact of his free fall was like the old philosophical conundrum about the tree that falls in the forest. The answer must be, I think, that beauty and grace are performed whether or not we will sense them. The least we can do is try to be there. Another time, I saw another wonder, sharks off the Atlantic coast of Florida. There is a way a wave rises above the ocean horizon, a triangular wedge against the sky. If you stand where the ocean breaks on a shallow beach, you see the raised water, and a wave is translucent, shot with lights. One late afternoon at low tide, 100 big sharks passed the beach near the mouth of the tidal river in a feeding frenzy. As each green wave rose from the churning water, it illuminated itself within itself the 6 or 8 foot long bodies of twisting sharks. The sharks disappeared as each wave rolled toward me. Then a new wave would swell above the horizon, containing in it, like scorpions in amber, sharks that roiled and heaved. The sight held awesome wonders, power and beauty, grace, tangled in a rapture with violence. Okay, so in this last scene here, our author describes a scene with sharks from off the Atlantic coast of Florida. And what happens every time one of the waves comes in, you can actually see the sharks in the wave, okay? And she describes them as they look like scorpions in amber, sharks that roiled and heaved, okay? However, once it says the sharks disappeared as each wave rolled toward me. Okay, so it's like with every single movement of the new wave, she gets a glimpse of these sharks due to the water being illuminated. Okay, kind of a cool, very freaky, scary sight to witness. All right, that concludes our reading. We are going to come back into the main room now and we will discuss.